Good morning, everyone. And for those in New Zealand, it's a little later in the afternoon, so kia ora. My name's Adam. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager for Canvas. And today, along with Paul Miller, we'll be hosting the Vocational Ed Training and User Group. And today, we'll be focusing on managing your Canvas content. And the reason for that, welcome. We do have a lot of new people who are attending today, which is really, really good to see. A lot of first timers as well. But I would just like to particularly call out Marita Bird, Kerry Buttery, Paul Pellier, and Sir Damien, who's not even here today. And I'm actually going to knight him officially. And he's not even here to share the celebration. But these four people are very important to this group. They help bounce ideas. They help provide context. And you'll be seeing more of them over the next couple of installments of this year's series, leveraging off their different talents in the vocational education market. Before we leave as well, I just want to let you know, if you do have any other questions today, please feel free to put them in the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself on the chat, and also feel free to introduce yourself public to other people if you want to catch up or do any of those sorts of things. This is the reason why we have these user groups, to enable you to go in and do these sorts of things. But today, we're going to be focusing on content, Canvas content. So the first element we're going to be focusing on is maintaining academic data. We're then going to look a little bit into versioning and digitalizing course versions, understanding when do we need to change to possibly using a different course. We're then going to look at the overarching admin. So we're going to structure Canvas for success. We're then going to play with content management tools, which is going to be a lot of fun. That's where I reckon we're going to have a lot of really entertaining discussions. And then lastly, if we have time, we're going to go through product updates as well, and give them a bit of a vocational education and training spin, if you like to go. But let's get straight into it, shall we? Maintaining academic data. I might start this with Kerry a little bit, if I may, and I know Marita's going to speak to this about it as well, from TAFE, but what does academic data and integrity mean to vocational education vendors? And I'm just going to leave it there, because I think you can probably carry on and discuss these in a little bit more further detail.
Okay. Academic data. So I would be seeing academic data as our evidence of student work, and in terms of maintaining the integrity of that and making sure that we've got authenticity, that it's that student's work, that we've made sure that we've got it mapped, all those sorts of things. So from a Canvas perspective, in terms of maintaining that integrity, is how we use Canvas to store that data in an ongoing basis. So making sure that our assessments are set up in a way that we're going to be able to retain that evidence and be able to produce that at audit. And
that's the one word I wanted to hear, the A word, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we do get asked a lot of questions, and I will delve into this a little bit in the next slide, but ensuring content integrity. And this is a particular point that I want to make very, very clear to everyone. And this is because of Canvas being a SaaS product, is that your student's attempts are linked to the assessment at the time the student completes them. Changing the assessment after the student has been marked can affect their score. Okay. So basically what we need to be aware of, if we're going in and changing an assessment or a quiz, we do possibly run the risk of changing or loosening up that integrity, so to speak. I mean, Marita, we had a great conversation yesterday about, how to go in and change these sorts of, when you have to go in and change assessments or rescore or do those sort of things. And it's a very, very time consuming progress if you need to actually mend these sorts of issues. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it's a really time consuming process, and you'll only do it once because you'll learn. But I think the best lesson I learned was when we had a blueprint. It was associated to about 15 courses, There was about 1,000 students across those courses in total. And we had the situation where the team updated the quiz. Now, they didn't change the number of questions, but they did update the questions. And the difficulty that we had is that to do that and to do that, maintain the data integrity was incredible. There was 2 weeks of midnight runs, literally, because we didn't want the risk of any student being in there and changing them. And it was ridiculous. So after that experience, we just don't.
Awesome. And unfortunately, and this is where I'm kind of going to come to this, most changes happen unknowingly. You don't know you've changed it because someone might have access to the blueprint master, believe that their course is only synced to it. Once they hit sync, that change then flows downstream and it changes other people's courses. It changes historical sort of stuff. And it's a completely innocent mistake, but it's a mistake that we've seen happen. And it's something that the reason why we're having this discussion today is we want to plan for the future to completely limit the chances of this happening, would be one thing. So it's also available. This issue may also happen if you have a blueprint sync and you send that downstream. It can override historical data associated to classic quizzes. The advantage of new quizzes, it's actually a bug, but it actually saves us, is that it only syncs on the original sync with new quizzes. So in other words, you could update a new quiz in your Blueprint Master, press sync, and that doesn't flow. So it actually ensures integrity. So that's something that's actually going to be changed quite soon. So be very wary when that changes over. And lastly, the other one that we see a lot of is user course permissions. They'll go into the actual course because they've just given them teacher permissions. They've got the ability to edit a quiz or an assessment, and they go in there and make their change, but they don't understand there's other sections or in that particular course, and they're going there and changing that. So I see Kerry was laughing a little bit, as almost if to say, I've been through this before. It's not very fun, but it does tend to happen. So what we're trying to do today is we're going to focus on how we can best leverage off Canvas to ensure that this never, I'll put never with an asterisk, but never, ever, 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 ever happens again. So digitalizing course versions. Now, this is something that you can consider in Canvas. And I'd just like to talk to Kerry or Marita or Paul is, how often do you look at updating courses or updating content? And what are some of the reasons for going in there and doing that? Who'd ever like to start the conversation first? Please feel free to go.
The biggest one, you've got at the top, package changes. And at the moment, just like Marita's feeling this pain, training packages, so many of them are in transition. So there's a lot of changes happening at the moment, but sometimes they'll be for a whole new qualification, but otherwise it can also just be new versions of units of competency. So that's one.
I'll add to that hello everyone. I'll add to that when you have quite an active continuous improvement program at your institute, that can prompt a lot of excitement. I know with our team, everyone's really keen to roll out the new changes. Hey, we need to update this, or we've got a new video or a new, we're going to make this question a lot clearer, because everyone keeps getting stuck on this same question all the time. And there's a lot of eagerness to go and get them updated. But without this, when we first started out with Canvas a few years back, we were just so excited about rolling out all these new changes on the fly. You know, oh, it's great being in the digital world, you can just change it on the fly, but we weren't aware of the flow-on effects from that. So definitely having some kind of system in place to manage those changes, and yeah, I think the sources or reasons for these upcoming changes can be purely team excitement and eagerness to solve issues that have come up in continuous improvement and quality improvement.
And I think, Marita, you were saying something yesterday about your team. That's kind of one of the big things was the continuous improvement of what you need to do at your TAFE.
Yeah, so we have our delivery teams have a continuous improvement plan. So basically what feeds into that continuous improvement plan are things like student feedback, outcomes from validation, industry feedback. So it's just one sort of space where everything is, collected and all the information. And what happens out of that is, they identify nice to haves or is this a non-compliance? So obviously, if it's a non-compliance, it needs to be dealt with, and that's on a case-by-case basis because it depends how you've got your infrastructure set up. But certainly, if it's a nice to have, it might be for your next iteration.
Awesome. And I just saw in the chat, Phil like nailed what I was going to talk about next. So here's some of we've talked about the reasons of why you would change. But when would you look to release these new versions of your course? Like you've gone in there, you've identified, yeah, there's a new feature that we'd like to put in our course, or we'd like to do these sorts of things. But how often do we do it? I know, Marita, you say you try to release, one a year to base that on. Phil mentioned in the chat, Philip Gradebook, if that's a shout out, mentioned they do it every 3 months. Okay, so in other words, they're looking at validating that on how they want to do it. So I suppose the question I'd like to ask all of you, and please feel free to look in the chat, how often do you feel that you need to update your course masters or your blueprint masters? And the other question I'm going to say is, who's got the responsibility of looking after this? Because this is something that we're going to actually talk about in great deal when we're structuring Canvas for Success, is who at your institution should be doing this? Should it be, obviously you're getting feedback from students. They're going to obviously be telling you these sorts of changes, but do you have a learning designer? Should your, trainers be doing this? Should you be doing this? I mean, my biggest issue as a Canvas CSM is that we come in and just feel that this particular role that we're discussing today isn't really a formalized role unless you've got a learning designer or a head of teaching or whatever that sort of may be in your particular organization. But really interesting. Who do you think should be responsible for leveraging off this? I mean, Kerry, you mentioned people before, this is when you do it, but what's your thoughts on this? Where should this ultimately kind of lie in your particular mind, I should say?
Yeah, that's an interesting question that's going to be different to other organisations, so very different to K-12, very different to university, because in an RTO setting, we need to be really strict around version control and approval processes. So we shouldn't be having content getting changed without going through some sort of approval process for that to happen. Then it might be that you might have an instructional designer or a learning designer, digital developer, someone in the organisation who is allocated the responsibility to make the changes. However, who is it that is approving that? And that might be a head of curriculum, it might be the RTO manager. It depends on the size of your RTO as to who it might be. But you do need to make sure then that you've got that approval process of this is what the content's going to be changing to, this is why, and be able to evidence the old and the new. So that's the other thing, is being able to show what your continuous improvement is.
Yeah. And obviously, we're going to talk about this in the next slide, but some people have meant, you can copy, once you release the content that you're teaching out of, copying that blueprint and making all your, improvements into that new course. Do you think that's a really great way to capture versioning by having separate blueprints? Or do you think it's really good also having, say, a third party, say like a Google Doc or a Cloud Doc that's actually saying, this is what we've changed?
So for audit purposes, you would have your continuous improvement register or something else that might be a Google Doc, or you might use Trello or something else like that, monday.com, where you are documenting what the change is and why it's changing. Like, did it come out of feedback from an audit? Did it get identified by a trainer? Where has that come from in terms of identifying what's changing? So I wouldn't rely just on going, oh, we've had a problem with this question in our quiz, let's just go and change it and put a new version up. Try and keep that continuous improvement register off to the side, documenting what it is that you've done so you've got that evidence.
I'll add to that quickly, Kerry. That's a really great point. We've, for low risk changes, we've actually implemented it's basically like a risk management decision-making process so that it empowers trainers to actually make really minor low risk changes. And we've been able to categorize it. I won't go into how we do that, but it's been great to empower trainers to make minor changes to either assessment instructions or course materials. And we actually have a peer review process. So when it is that low risk stuff that isn't going to have a huge impact on compliance or mapping or anything like that, basically having one person, be it a trainer or someone who's involved in developing courses, and then someone else equally qualified to come along and review that, and they tick a little box. And that's been really good because it stops the bottleneck of things building up. That's just in our system. It's worked really well for us for the low risk changes.
Awesome.
I really like that idea.
There we go. See, that's what we're all about, leveraging off each other. And one of the things that you said there, Paul, which was really key, which we'll also explore in, is it's really important to empower people to get involved and change this. But one of the other key things that we do notice is permissions, like having the right people with the right roles in your Canvas instance. So people who are, say, you may create an internal PD course in Canvas, enroll the assessors, and once they understand this is what Blueprints is, but this is what you could do if you get it wrong, or if you've got permission to edit a course, you need to be mindful of X, Y, and Z. You can actually give permissions out to individuals to control that, but it's also really important that you also give them powers if they become educated on what the consequences of their actions are. What we do see a lot of people, especially in the vet space, they use the standard, and I know I'll get in trouble because I call them teachers, but we'll call them assessors, we'll call them trainers, you can call them whatever you like, but I'll just use Canvas vernacular here, is that you have a student, you have a teacher role, you also have an observer role, a TA role, and a designer role, okay? A lot of vets don't customize those roles, right? They don't look at it as a wholesale. They'll be like, oh, I'm always an admin. Like, and we all know if you give a child a key to the car, it's probably going to end in disaster. Okay, so it's ensuring that this is where you are, this is what experience you lies, and these are the permissions that you kind of go through. I know if there's any big establishments on there, you would have more permissions than I'd care to know, but it's a really important thing to understand that each person in your organization is given the correct roles based on what their knowledge and their skill set is. And I think that's a really great way to help empower as well. So before we get into Canvas Speak, does anyone have any questions via the chat? I saw that we've got Dan. Awesome. Dan as well, another Instructure employee is answering there as well. Thank you, Colleen, for your information about how it's dictated based on the size of your organizations. Thanks, David, as well, for providing context of who's responsible for the updates and the changes at Para. That's fantastic. Yeah, if you have any other questions at all, please feel free to ask via the chat. Paul's online, twiddling his thumbs. You might as well, stretch his brain capacity today and to see how we go. But now we're going to dive into structuring Canvas for success. So one of the key things there is a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the next section is going to focus on things that you can kind of set and forget. Okay, they don't really need a lot of adjusting, but once they're set up, it's going to create a really good framework before you then start moving your content around. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is subaccounts. Just on the chat there, how many people are aware of what a subaccount is? Do they even know what a subaccount is? Would be probably a really great thing. Yep. Awesome. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully everyone. Yeah, that's cool. Next question is, are you using them? would be my next question. Because one of the things that we do tend to find is people talk about sub-accounts at the very start of their journey. And I will quote an article that's actually on our space, which is written by our dear old friend Ruth. Ruth still works for us. She's actually quite senior now. She's in charge of product. So yeah, you've always got to be careful what I say about Ruth. But anyway, this is something that we developed quite a long time ago, and it's something that helps people break down sub-accounts on how they wish to use it. And that's what's really key here. There is no right or wrong. Okay, you can break them down however you want. You may break it down by locations. You may break it down by training package. You may break it down by qualification. You may break it down by industry sponsored partner. You may create an account and then a sub account of it. Okay, so you can go either way. But the main thing I just want to focus on is that it's an easy way to silo your instance however you choose. Because once again, we've got admin permissions. Okay, admin permissions can be given out at a root account level and a sub account level. So you might not want to give someone complete access to the whole instance. You might want to just go, I'd like you to look after the Tasmanian region. Okay, so you can control that a little bit more as well. The other thing is that you can access this via the Canvas UI, or you can do this in bulk via CSV and API. And that's where scale becomes really, really important, is that you can do these things in bulk using CSV. I don't know, Paul, being the API guru that he is, probably creates this stuff all the time, but really important. And I will stress this, and we stress this every time, wherever you see a SysID in Canvas, I beg you, please put something in, anything. Because if you put something in, we can change it in bulk. If you don't put anything in, the only way to change it is to go into the Canvas UI, okay? So coming up with your own coding, your own theme, because that will actually help make it more searchable as well. So feel free to leverage off SysIDs as much as you possibly can. To the panel, does anyone have any other tricks or really good rationale for using sub-accounts across an instance for the industry?
My big one is just, I was going to pick up on what you said, Adam. Use SysIDs for everything. Give everything a SysID, because it just makes it easier if you need to do any bulk changes.
Exactly. And that's when, like I always get these questions asked like, oh, you know, we want to change all this stuff in bulk, or we want to remove students in bulk, or we want to conclude students in bulk. Yes, you can do that very easily if, when you create in the first instance, you're using a SysID, okay? Once it's created, it's there. We can change it to another code, completely fine, okay? That's easy. We can do that in bulk, actually, with the change SysID update. But it's a really, really, really important thing that needs to be available, because the next one is, who is aware of terms? I'm really going to be excited about this. Who is aware of terms? Okay, everyone's a bit quieter on this one. This is what I was expecting. Oh, there's a lot of people saying aware. That's good. That's my initials. Yeah, I'm present. Thank you. Okay, cool. Okay, my next question was, who's actually using them? Okay. And this is where I would like to see honesty come out. Come on, everyone. There's got to be some more people out there who aren't using it. Come on, you can admit it's fine. This is a place for openness, transparency, and sharing. Yeah, no dad jokes. Yeah, I promise. Okay. So what are terms? And this is where I want to make this very, 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 very clear. A term is a period of time, a period you define, okay? Schools, we have a system where we go term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, okay? We even recommend as CSMs here, and Paul can back me up here, using that quite uniquely is going to actually limit your reporting period. A term is really good when it's used as a calendar year, especially when you start running admin reports and starting all these sort of things. You can capture more data over a greater period. The other thing that's really cool about terms is terms can also assist you in searching for courses. So for instance, if you're using Subaccounts and you're using terms, you can really filter down to where you want to do or what content you're actually looking for, okay? It's another thing that's available in the Canvas UI. Very, very, very simple to use, and very simple to use when you actually set up. Paul, have you got no on because you don't use terms, or you've just had no on for a while? You can change that to yes. Once again, access for terms can be done via the Canvas UI or in bulk by the CSV and the API. Also, I'd like to say as well, the term is a period of time. It can also control people's access and availability to courses based on specific user roles. However, you can obviously drill down as well into using term dates, then using course dates, and then using section dates as well. Okay, so I just want to, once again, Paul, Marita, do you leverage off terms? How do you break down your terms in your particular organisations?
We have we use a lot of terms, like a lot, simply because of the fact, because with our provisioning, so when the course comes in, it's an academic year 2022, but we leverage off them for reporting purposes as well. So we have like a blueprint term for 2022. So if a blueprint is, for 2022, we put it into there. We also have cross-listed terms, because sometimes delving down to, you have an empty course and you can't work out why the students are there. But if you have it was cross-listed in 2022, we go, oh, okay, I know what's happened now. So we have lots of detail. So we generally have about 4 a year. So it's academic, blueprint, cross-listed, and I do think we have an open one, but we don't use that regularly.
The default.
Yeah.
I'll confess, Adam, that we don't use terms. We did some experiments with them a couple of years ago, but we tend to organise more using sections than a default term.
Yeah, so I agree with the sections is probably a greater way for student control of cohorts and things like that. But with terms, as I said, like you could say, I just want to search for all the courses done in 2022. Right? You would select the term 2022 and all the courses linked to that term would appear. Now, in your first year of Canvas, that doesn't make much sense. But as you get bigger and you go and you started, say, 5 years ago, you got 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Like I think Colleen was talking about this before. By putting all those courses for that period in that term, you're instantly making it easier for your users to find the course they need to be a part of. Also find out where the masters of these courses lives as well. So for instance, in 2022, this is what the master version looked like. In 2021, this is what the master version looked like. You're actually just making it a lot easier to search and find what you're looking for via the Canvas UI, okay? And that's where most people are going to start searching for this. There's not going to be a lot of people that bring out like section dates or all that sort of stuff, because if you want to search for a particular section, you can't search by the course menu. Right, so you need to know roughly where I'm looking in order to find what we need to find. But Paul, you probably do that in an API, so I'm not even going to go there. And also, for those of you that just heard Marita mention cross-listing, we got to walk before we can run. Okay, so Marita's just on mute because she's like, yes, we've come through this with a lot of it's a lot of experience that leads you to go down the line of cross-listing, but being aware of that functionality is also very cool.
I think, Adam, too, it's really important that while we may be the custodians of Canvas in our organisations, we don't own it. And some of our more senior directors actually find that interface of being able to filter through the terms makes it very easy for them to find what they're looking for. So if they have to deal with a student complaint or an industry consultation, they can easily find what they're looking for there.
And that coupled as well, because they might be like, if you have your sub-accounts broken down into regions, they go, we got a complaint from a student in the Hobart. So they go sub-account Hobart, type in the course name. The chances of them finding them are significantly quicker than going to the main course, typing in the course name, and then, Hobart, Devonport, Barnbougle, sorry, that's the first thing that came to my head. I'm a golfer, sorry. All those sorts of bits and pieces kind of come together, and we're just trying to make it a lot easier for people to search as well. But there's one
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
David Shield just made a good point, which was on my mind. Is it's just great for filtering and analytics. When you go to search for courses, it is a filter that you can. The terms are a filter that you can search by. So even if you're not using term dates, which in vocational education you may not be because you might have rolling enrollments or whatever it is. Just having that calendar year, so you can, and you've already associated the courses that start during that calendar year with that term. It makes it really easy to just filter down and provide those analytics, because all of the account analytics in Canvas are based, you can filter that by term. And I did mention this in the chat, but I thought I'd just say it really quickly. You can override term dates if you do use term dates with course dates, and course dates can then be overwritten by section dates. It's kind of like a bit of a hierarchy. So yeah, you can make use of it, even if you're not using all the capabilities of terms.
Yeah, and I've just shared a link. So I'll be sharing a copy of this presentation with everyone after. This is hyperlinked to understanding how term dates, course date, and section dates work in Canvas. Okay, so a little bit to what Paul's just explained there. Kerry, do you want to ask that question you asked in the chat?
Yes, so because I don't use terms a lot, because most of the time the RTOs I work with have got rolling enrollments. So I've not yet used them very much. I was just wondering how that works.
So one of the ways that we kind of suggest people use it is that use it based on, because we don't roughly know when the student's going to finish, okay? Because there could be extensions, they could be whatever it is. The way I suggest people use terms is like, everyone who's enrolled in a course in 2022, those courses are linked to term 2022, right? So if they're enrolled in January 2023, they are, I understand that's going to carry over, but what you're trying to do is, if you're trying to find a specific person with a needle in a haystack at the moment, if everyone's on a default term, it's very hard to kind of locate what you need to do. Whereas at least this will break it down. And as Paul mentioned, like, you might just want user analytics, right? How are people using the system? It's not completely relevant to the rolling enrollments. We just want to know how many people logged in, like how many people use this functionality. And that kind of makes that life a little bit easier. I know a lot of people use section dates to actually really, like section names, to really break down when that cohort started or what it was in relation to. I know a lot of people do that as well. But I just use terms as a generic point in time. I think with rolling enrollments, it is slightly different. Hopefully I've got some really exciting news for you next user group about a functionality called pace plans, but I will speak about that when it's official. I might have gone too far already. I'm going to get in trouble with Ruth. Now, lastly, we've got here permissions. Now, who uses permissions? Who has ever customized a permission in Canvas? And I'm talking about course and account. One person. Also, oh, here we go. Okay, good. Sweet. I was a bit worried there. Awesome. So permissions and roles are very, very different. How many people does, and I think, Paul, you talked about this a long time ago in a previous user group we had. How many roles in Canvas are linked to actual job descriptions? Like if you've got no interest, if you've got no benefit at all by touching the content, why do you have access to it? What I'm trying to say to you is, you do run the risk of giving a child the keys to the car. Like something could go wrong, and we're trying to prevent those changes from happening. So I encourage people to think about Canvas roles. So you can have student 1, student 2, student 3. You might have teacher, trainer, assessor, whatever that may be. But you can then use that to customize the role. And the reason why I think this is really important now is there's been some updates to permissions in Canvas where you're able to better break down functionality. And the main one is around the add, edit, and delete. Okay. So if you go into Canvas previously, there was one permission, which was like content, add, edit, delete. There was only one option. That's now been broken down, is that you can choose whether they can add, you can choose whether they can edit, and you can choose whether they can delete. So you can remove those micro factors from the discussion. Granular permissions. Thank you, Dan. This will give you better control over what people are doing. Okay. A lot of people don't visit permissions until a long way down the track. It's almost like, yeah, we talked about it in our admin, sweet, no problems at all. Push it to the side. I'll worry about it when I need to. And a lot of people don't get back to that. So I suppose to the team here, I mean, Marita, you're having a slightly bigger organization. You must have multiple permissions across both account and course level. Who's kind of responsible for looking after those?
So our educational design team look after those, but that's in consultation with the stakeholders. So it depends. I mean, I'm actually going to academic committee tomorrow with a paper about user permission. So we're about to introduce administration permission, but it's only because that's the button that they press for all of our teachers. So at the sub-account level, there's very little that they can do. It's really only for viewing purposes. But what it allows us to do is if they've got a teacher role, that's great. But if their course is in a particular sub-account, they can we can take them out as an enrolment. So their academic data, the integrity is still there. They've still been a participant. However, we can put a hard close on that and they can still search for that later on for validation purposes because they're getting lost amongst, their dashboard and all courses, and we kind of need to move them out. So what they'll see is only the ones that are current and being able to use that sort of sub-account admin permission will allow them to be able to go back and review and maintain our integrity. So we've got lots of permissions at lots of different levels and it works quite well.
Awesome. Yeah, and the last point I want to mention there as well, and this is probably for more of those executive sponsors or decision makers in the room, is leveraging off something like Growing with Canvas or a Be the Hero or your own internal training and linking that internal PD to permissions is a really smart way to ensure good business continuity planning. I can't pronounce that word, my apologies. But what I'm trying to say to you is that if you're building training, so say people want to have this particular permission or they want to go to this level, you can also leverage off Badger as well to give people badges based on what they've achieved, is that they're like, hey, I want to go in and edit this course. Hey, you don't have permissions to that. Go do this training and understand what having this permission is all about. Once they've accredited against that, give them that permission, okay? And then obviously new starters and new people that are going through your organization, instead of like passing, information from say me to Paul or me to Marita, it's kind of like, no, this is the organization's information that is always there and we can always update it, which is really, really, really cool as well. So that's something that I always continue. Once again, I've got a link to an article posted by Paul and Tom on business continuity planning. And also I put there a link to permissions and roles. So you can learn about account roles, you can learn about course roles, you can also learn about what each role actually can do and how to actually change it as well. Okay. Here comes Kerry's favorite. Kerry's already dibbed on this. So before we get into this, just want to make sure, how's everyone feeling? Are we learning? Are we feeling that we're going too fast? Just give me a little idea how we're feeling in the chat there. Is this something that we're feeling? Because we haven't even talked about blueprints. We haven't even talked about anything content or course related yet. All we've done is structure Canvas to ensure that we're focusing on that integrity piece. Everything we've done so far is about that, okay? But what we're about to do is we're about to walk into the realm, and I jumped a slide because that's classic me. I put it in the wrong order. Sorry about that. Is we're going to look at content management tools. Now, before I start here, how many people here use it's a Canvas course, but how many people use a Canvas course as a master template? Whether it's for a course, a module, a diploma, a certificate, a unit of competency, how many people use like a separate master template that doesn't have any students enrolled in it whatsoever? Okay, really good. Awesome. This is really good. This will be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So this is fantastic. Look at all these people. It's so smart. This makes me happy. That's all right. Paul's happy too, because we usually the people have to deal with the course and break some hearts. But I'm going to call the importance of a content master. You can call it a master course, you can call it a blueprint master course, you can call it a template course. I don't care really what you call it. It's all simply a Canvas course. Okay, that's all it is. It's basically a place where you can put your ideas and where you control the content. Once again, use sysids. But in the sysid for these blueprints, maybe they assist in the searching. So identify it as a master, or identify it as the cert, or identify it as the unit of competency. Date or volume number it. We use a really interesting system here. We just use, so for instance, today would be 220330. Okay, for 2022, March 30th. That's when this volume was controlled. Okay, something really simple like that can help you search for the most up-to-date one. Okay, and understand what we will be doing here. You can actually use, even if you aren't using blueprints, even if you turn on the blueprint master, it's a really great way to lock that content down because you can't enroll any students into it. Okay, and blueprint is an admin role, so that's something that's really smart. Ensuring the right people have the right roles and permissions to control integrity, and also understanding where should that master course live. For instance, if you're using blueprints, they're going to cascade down. You can't have something going from one sub account to another. So should the blueprint live in the sub account, or should it live in the root account where it can get accessed anyway? Okay, some situations for you to think about as well. Now, Kerry made a big song and dance about this morning. Put it in my notes saying, I want to talk about blueprints and commons.
I was just jumping in to cover Damien.
No. Damien's been covered. Don't worry about him. We're well past that. Just a little bit of a context of what what blueprints are, what commons is. I've got some slides that I'll just go through as you talk, to be perfectly honest, and we'll get into it as we go. Yeah, so just wondering as well, how many people are actually using blueprints? Because I sometimes find that for some RTOs, it's better to use blueprints, and for others, it's better to make use of commons for different things. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Oh, we've even got a poll. Look at that. So just got to close that off my screen. So with blueprints, something that I've found, it's great when you're going to use it for your whole course, but sometimes we're going to be bringing multiple masters into the one course where we're going to enroll students. So for example, we've got some RTOs that have got different master courses for different units of competency, and they then copy those into a course for students depending on what units of competency have been selected for that particular group. So in that instance, the blueprint didn't really work because we're blueprinting from that course to a child course. So that's when we then look at using commons or even just copying the courses. So that's one of the main things about blueprints, is seeing if it's going to actually work for the way that you've got your structure set up. And like Adam said before, if we've got our master blueprint, we want to be able to filter down into those sub accounts. So even looking at how you've got your sub accounts set up so that you're going to be able to filter down. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's also like, for instance, I think blueprints is really good because if you've got outsourced trainers and assessors and you don't want them touching any of the content, you can lock that in the blueprint. So all child courses can't be edited. So I think that's a great control mechanism. But you can also control that by privileges in the course by removing those edit settings as well. So there's two places you can do it. But the main point I wanted to suggest there is that people who are doing whole courses, like they're literally picking up this course and moving it, and everyone's learning in this, picking up this course and moving it here, I think blueprints is the easiest way to do that, personally. But where commons kind of comes in uniquely, and I think you touched on that, Kerry, is that you are able to pull specific elements from Canvas Commons because you don't have to upload the course. You can upload just a quiz, you can upload just a module, you can upload whatever it is that you like, and build almost like a custom course. So say, for instance, you want to do, I don't know, a cert in something, and everyone in that cohort is exempt on these 3 things because of recognition of prior learning. Okay. If you've got the blueprint master and you send that over, like that's all going to come over. Okay. So they're going to see it all, but they've already done it, which can lead to student confusion. Whereas in this particular case, you can actually bring over the modules that are required, put the section into the course, as Paul mentioned earlier, and then they can learn what's just in front of them. Okay. So the only reason why I think that Canvas Commons isn't as popular to vocational education as it probably should be is that teachers kind of control this, right? Anyone with that's got a teacher privilege can go to Canvas Commons and pull content down. Okay, so I think it's, to me personally, I think it's a control thing. I think it's a integrity thing. I still explain it because as your team gets more and more skilled, this might be something that you want to do. Okay. So I just think it's always a really interesting thing. Well, you can also do versioning control on there as well. Like same sort of way that blueprints work. You can update, asterisks. Remember, if we change the assessment, we can also change it downstream. So just be mindful of that. Marita, I see you've come off mute.
I was just thinking too, it depends on the purpose of your blueprint. So not all blueprints are because you want to sync content out. It might be, like you say, like a permission thing. So it might be that you want it locked. So it might be that you just lock your assessment. So that you have a blueprint, just the assessments are in there, and you could put your learning into Commons if you didn't have that level of control. So therefore teachers can then pull things in and out, but you've maintained your academic integrity, so your data integrity. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I mean, we blueprint everything. There's not one thing that isn't, well, I think there's one, and Kerry would know what that was, but there's nothing in our space that isn't blueprinted. But we might have one unit of competency that sits across 42 different products. So we have to be really careful about the scale of that. So, but every assessment is locked, but that way we can make sure we monitor it. But the learning, I mean, that could be flexible.
Yeah, for sure. And completely escaped me is that in Canvas Commons, you can also share either instructional wide or locally, just within your instance. And as Colleen said, picked up a really good homepage template from searching in Canvas Commons as well. So it's a great place to go search and find what other people are doing, because here's the really cool thing. It's already written in Canvas. It already contains Canvas design. You're just pulling it down and editing it. So use that as an inspirational piece. Don't recommend sharing like all your certs and your your diplomas on there for everyone else to pull down and just literally copy. Probably not a good idea, but just being mindful, once again, controlling privileges of who can access Commons. Very smart as well. Kerry, I saw you come offline.
There's one more thing to be careful of with Commons. And this is if your RTO is using it to push across content that then gets brought down into courses. Whoever shares that content is the only person who can update that content and push that update. So what we sometimes do is create a generic user, and that might be field admin or someone, and that generic user is who is going to push across the content to Commons, because if it's linked to a person and that person leaves, then you can't be pushing and then updating downstream where it's linked to courses.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a really smart call. Usually we recommend, if you've got a generic field admin, use that person as a generic as well, because everything is linked to that one profile, which is really, really cool. And they can simply, other users can go in, once again, if they've got permission, act as, very simple, go in there, do the change themselves, log out of act as, and then everything is still linked under that particular problem as well. Last but not least, who uses course templates? I know there was 3 people. Who knows about course templates? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Oh, strong nose. Yes. Oh, Dave. Yeah, of course you would definitely know about. Okay. Course templates were kind of something that was developed during COVID. Really sneakily good. If I was going back now and I was advising how would I roll out Canvas initially, I used to say, we'd create, design a generic template. Okay, I'd send that out to all my courses, and then I would start getting people to fill in the content. Course templates takes that to the next level. Course templates allows you to turn a Canvas course into a master for the sub account. So every time someone clicks on this sub account and press plus course, the template is already brought over. So you're starting from the same exact spot instead of blueprinting it out to whatever it needs to be. It's more handy if you were rolling this out at the beginning of your implementation. Okay, I think there's definitely a bit more weight to it being used there. However, I think it's a really great way if you're encouraging different places to upload and you want, hey, from now on, we're designing on the new TAS-TAFE template. Okay, all new courses from now on are going to have this, and then they can bring their content over. Setup is also controlled by the admin, which is really, really, really cool, and gives you a bit of a lockdown there as well. So yeah, something that may not be relevant to everyone on this call, but definitely something to consider if you're just in your early phases of rolling out Canvas and you're not sure how you're going to get content out there. Book in some time with your CSM and we can go through it. Also like to just let you know, I know we're running late as always, but I've got a few articles that I'm going to share with you. One is the course content distribution comparison. So this compares the ins and outs of sharing in Canvas across direct share, blueprints, commons, all this sort of stuff. Suggest you save it. It's one of those things that we update quite regularly as well. So really good for someone like Kerry. If you're constantly looking at different solutions, that's a great place. Don't rule out anything. Have an open mind, because as time changes, so might your needs. Leveraging off term, course, and section dates, or conclude users and courses to control user access and communication. Remember, concluded courses can still appear in the course search and enrollments via the Gradebook. Really great way to clean up what's on your dashboards, especially if they're enrolled in those particular courses as well. Just move that off. And lastly, if you do have any other questions about this, please feel free to reach out via the Vocational Education Interest Group, or book in some time with your CSM. Okay, this is what we do. When you come to us with a problem, our job is to sit down and explain to you, but we need the context, which is a really powerful thing. How are we all going? Was that good? Did we all learn something? Paul's learned something. He's got a thumbs up. I love that. Awesome. I know how people always like, we need more of these. Unfortunately, I would rather deliver an hour of quality a quarter versus trying to make things interesting. I really think that we can benefit a lot more from this time, which is awesome. I'm really quickly going to fly through the product updates. The first one is the enhanced Gradebook filters. Who has found this one by accident? Anyone? Anyone know what it is? Yes, Elizabeth. You might be my new favorite. Awesome. So the enhanced Gradebook filter is a new filtering system that actually is applied to the Gradebook. It allows the user to create a customized filter for that particular course. And I just want to stress that it's for the individual user for a particular course. The good thing is you can save them. You don't need to recreate it every time. You can obviously use assignment groups, modules, start group, submissions. Really, really smart. If you want to say, hey, who hasn't been marked yet? Let's sort by submissions. Who's submitted? Who hasn't? Right? Who's been marked? Who hasn't? That's a really cool place to use this sort of template, especially in bigger courses as well. You can also use start date and end date as well. Mind you, you can also customize this with other filters in your Gradebook, which are sections, names. The rest escapes me, but I'm sure Paul's going to probably put it in the chat in about 5 seconds, but that'll be fine. So, but that is a really great feature. You can turn that on as a feature preview if you're the account admin as well. This one I completely forgot about, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but January was busy, is matching questions get a partial credit now. So it's a really good way to obviously give people rewards based on what they're giving as well. But yeah, this one kind of slipped through the cracks for me in January. So even I miss release notes. It happens to all of us at the best of times. But I'll put a link in the bottom of the screen there to discuss that in more detail. How many of you use the new account suspended status, the user status? How many of you know that this particular status came about? Oh, Grace, thank you so much. I love hearing that. That's awesome. I know exactly. ERA has had a long history of this. So just to give you a little bit of an update, suspended user status previously, a lot of people are, how can we control people accessing Canvas? Because with vocational education, we want to keep the information in the Canvas UI. We don't want to delete the user because that deletes everything with it. By giving the user a suspended status, it actually just prevents the user from logging in, which is how you control your user numbers and your contracted usage numbers. But it leaves everything intact in the actual Canvas UI, which is really handy if you want to quickly go back and have a look at things as well. It's now available. You can actually see in the Canvas UI if the user has been suspended, which is a really handy thing. They are looking at an update as well to let trainers, teachers, anyone who's got access to the course, to let them know if that user is currently suspended, because they won't see that at present. So that's something to be mindful of. But in the more here section below, really great article on how you can use it, how you can set it up as well with a lot more context, which is absolutely awesome. Who hates making buttons outside of Canvas? If there's not every person doesn't answer yes to this question, I'll be very, 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 very surprised. Yeah, thanks, Jay. All of us. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is an icon maker coming to the RCE editor where you can actually go in, and instead of going to Pixlr or going to Photoshop or going to the Button Factory, I don't even know if that's still around, you'll actually be able to create your own icons in Canvas to ensure consistency across the course. A really, 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 really cool addition. One of those things that you're like, didn't really realize how important it would be until they made it. And this is also going to be coupled with another announcement coming at the end of this month. I think it's next month, sorry, is that emojis are coming to SpeedGrader. Yeah, that was a Hack Week project. Other fancy things from Hack Week include confetti. Who doesn't love confetti, right? Confetti for life. Okay, if you haven't got confetti turned on in your feature options, we need to have a serious discussion. But this is going to be a really handy way to help people communicate. Seeing the confetti. Oh, hello, Amelia. Yeah, you came out of the shadows there. It's a really great way that we can use and better communicate what we're trying to say. And that's available to teachers giving feedback as well as students giving feedback back, which will be a really, really awesome thing to deal with. So, okay, I just
need to respond to Lana. Asqua needs some emojis in their life, I think.
Asqua need a lot of things in their life. Let everyone's on mute and laughing. But thank you very much, everyone. That's our session today. I was only 2 minutes late, which is pretty good if any of you have had a meeting with me previously. As I mentioned before, I will post this in our vocational education and training group for you to reference off. I will have a copy of the slides, all the hyperlinks will work from there. But once again, use this as the basis of discussion for what you want to do in your organization. But if you're ever unsure of anything, please feel free to book in some time or email your CSM. I can't say that enough. Half an hour with us can set you up for a very, very, very long time. Okay. And that's what we ultimately want to do, because it's one of those things that you shouldn't be playing around with daily. But once again, thank you very much, everyone. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm quite happy to hang around for another 10, 15 minutes. But thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.